Welcome back. Next up is the lesson that covers the topic of iSER. iSER, which is the iSCSI extensions over RDMA, is a feature introduced in vSphere 6.7. There are new features with this feature in vSphere 7, though. And so we'll talk about describing the support in vSphere 7 and also the configuration of iSER on ESXi hosts. So yes, iSCSI extension for RDMA, otherwise known as iSER, gives us high performance iSCSI connectivity, but instead of using TCP/IP, which is what traditional iSCSI uses, this is using RDMA, right? So that gives direct memory of the, direct access from the memory of the host to the memory of the array, bypassing operating systems and CPU, as well as doing this over RDMA over Converged Ethernet version 2, right? Rocky version 2, which offers a lossless Ethernet network, giving very high performance, very little latency in giving direct connections, through the Ethernet network to your storage infrastructure. Should offer higher throughput, lower latency than traditional TCP/IP. So vSphere 7 adds iSER for virtual volumes. That's some of the bigger changes, right? And also vSphere 7 is where we are starting to support for Rocky version 2, that lossless Ethernet network. And of course, we'll need to have an array that supports iSER on Rocky as well. So you need the two sides here. Now the configuration is a lot like setting up, say, a software initiated iSCSI. You need to create a software adapter, right? You'll need to create a virtual iSER adapter, right? Another one of those HBA64 types of devices. This time, though, it's actually not available in the vSphere client, right? The vSphere client lets you add an iSCSI software adapter, a fiber channel over Ethernet software adapter, and as we just saw, an NVMe over RDMA software adapter, right? So those are there in the vSphere client. For the iSER, at the moment, it's available through the ESX CLI command. After that, though, it'll show up as an adapter, like an iSCSI adapter almost, but it says it's an iSER adapter. You'll still have all the traditional iSCSI attributes that need to be configured, such as the properties of the adapter, right? It'll have the name, you have the opportunity to change its name and its alias. You'll be able to change the port binding. In fact, you'll need to set up a port binding between a VM kernel port and the adapter that you'll have to install. You'll need to have one of those network adapters that has RDMA support. So you'll need to have the RDMA adapter installed. And that's where you need to make sure you have the port binding between the VM kernel and that adapter. Also configure, like iSCSI, you'll need to have dynamic or static discovery so that we can learn what namespaces, these are LUNs, what LUNs are available on the array. This is an NVMe. These are just iSCSI over RDMA. So anyway, these are LUNs, and these LUNs are going to be presented, and you'll discover them either by adding the targets in with a static mechanism or with a dynamic discovery method. There's CHAP support as well. Since this is really just iSCSI, it just isn't over TCP/IP, it's over RDMA. Jumbo frames are also an important part of this, since we need to reduce the overhead on the individual Ethernet frames, so jumbo frames will reduce that overhead. So requirements, make sure your iSCSI storage supports iSER, and that we have the RDMA capable adapters on your ESX service, just like we saw with NVMe over RDMA. You need the same basic kind of network adapter. And you'll need an RDMA capable switch, because these are unique frames. They're not the standard Ethernet frames. And you'd also want to make sure that it is set, the switch port has been set for a lossless. You can also adjust the flow control on the ESXi host. So there's a ESX CLI command for managing that. And then again, make sure you have your RDMA switch ports set for lossless connections for your iSER initiator and target systems. So basically, here's the overall process. You'll need to first create the software adapter with the ESX CLI command. So we run ESX CLI RDMA iSER add. That creates, if you don't have one, HBA64, right? VM HBA64. In our example, it looks like there was already an HBA64, so it created HBA65 for us. It is telling us that it's an iSER adapter, right? iSCSI over RDMA. It is currently unbound. It's been granted iSCSI identifier, right? And so that's where if I went to the properties tab, I could adjust that name. I could effectively, one of the next things you're going to need to do is set up the network port binding because it is currently unbound. So you'll need to go to the port binding just like you would do in a software initiated iSCSI. Also, what you're going to want to do is define your dynamic or static discovery so that it can, learn how to find the LUNs that have been made available to it over doing a storage rescan. And there's also, well, not shown here, but under the properties tab, you could have set CHAP for this as well. So it's a lot like setting up iSCSI. It's just that you start off with the ESXCLI RDMA iSER add, and you'll need to also make sure that the RDMA capable network adapter has been discovered by your host, right? So go and look at your network adapters and make sure there is a VM RDMA adapter recognized by your system. And so that was the description of support for iSER in vSphere 7 and the configuration of iSER on vSphere 7 as well. That concludes this lesson. We'll take another quick break and we'll see you in the next lesson.